Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel Data Delights with Coco, the channel that brings to you the joy of data analytics. And today I'm going to be analyzing the same set of data analysis questions using three of the most widely used data analytics tools: Excel, Power BI, and SQL. Interesting, right? So basically, I'm going to be comparing the processes involved in answering these questions using each of these tools. And we're going to see which one does it best. A little bit of disclaimer out there. This video is not to entirely judge the efficiency of these tools because each of these tools have that one feature or features that make them stand out or make them efficient based on the task. This video is just to show you that you can actually analyze data using any of these tools. But of course, we are going to have that one tool that does it more efficiently. If you're ready to see these tools in action, make sure you stick around. So let's get started. All right, so first of all, before we even begin any data analysis task, we have to first of all understand what we want to do. We have to first of all understand the data. So I have here with me a subscription cohort analysis data. So this data is all about subscriptions, and we have the customer ID. So for each customer, there is a unique identifier. And then we have the created date, which is talking about the date the customer subscribed. Then we have the cancelled date, which is talking about the date the customer cancelled their subscription. We have, so if it's showing blank, it means that the customer is still subscribed, right? The customer has not yet cancelled, but wherever there is a date, it means that the customer has cancelled, and this is the date the customer cancelled. We also have the subscription cost column, which is talking about the cost of subscription. So I'm going to apply a filter to this real quick. I just need to see the values that I have in this column. All right, so I'm going to come here and apply a filter. Okay. All right, so I am going to select this filter. Okay, so the cost of subscription is $39, and that is for each month the cost of subscription is $39. So when I check the subscription interval, I also have that the subscription interval is by month. So that is, subscriptions are paid each month. So we have another column which tells us if a subscription was paid, because so let's take for instance Netflix or YouTube. So Netflix or YouTube might give you 1 month trial, so in that month you do not pay, but to continue using their features or to continue using the platform or the app, you have to subscribe. So it's possible that people or customers would just subscribe for a month or even less than a month just to test the features or see the contents of the platform, right? And they won't pay. So it's normal. I mean, some people do that. Okay. All right. So let's see. Let us go dive right into it. So let's see the questions that we have. So we're going to use these three tools to answer these questions and basically see which one does it more efficiently. All right, so the first question we have here is, what is the total number of customers including those who cancelled? That is, including those who have cancelled their subscription. So I'm going to start with Excel, then move on to Power BI, then SQL. So for this SQL, I'm going to be using Microsoft SQL Server for this SQL. So it doesn't matter whichever SQL DBMS or whichever SQL server you are using, you can still answer data analysis questions. All right, so what is the total number of customers including those who cancelled? So I'm going to be using the count function to answer this. All right, and before I do that, I'm going to turn this data into a table just so that it is easy for me to call the data and the columns. All right, so I'm going to format as a table, and then I'm going to name this table subscription. Good. Now I can easily call it in my function. So I'm going to do equal to count. The value I want to count is the customer ID column. So that is from my subscription table. And I want to count the customer ID column. So you see how easy it is for me to call the column, call the table that I want to calculate, right? Okay, so I'm just going to close this and let's see. So we have 3,069 total customers, including those who have canceled their subscription. So let's see how I can do this in Power BI. So I have my data here. So for this, I'm going to create a measure. Okay, I'm going to come here, click on new measure. All right, and my measure name is going to be total customers. All right, which is going to be equal to count. So I want to count the customer ID from my subscription cohort analysis data. So let's see what this gives us. Okay, so to visualize this, I'm going to put this in a card visual. Okay, and then I am going to select the total customers. I'll drag it into the field. All right, so you see that we've gotten the same answer, right? Now moving on to SQL. Okay, so total customers, and this is going to be equal to select all. So I'm going to select all the rows from my table. So my table is subscription, just so you see how it looks like in SQL. Okay. To get the total customers, I'm going to count all of these rows. From the subscription table, and when I execute this, you see I got 3,069. So using these three tools, I've been able to answer this particular question. I know, easy, right? So we're going to gradually go from basic questions to complex questions. So stay tuned. The next question is, what is the total number of customers who have cancelled subscription? So we have 3,069 customers. So how many customers have cancelled their subscription? All right, so customers who have cancelled their subscription, that is, they are those customers who do not have who have dates in the cancel date column. So anywhere there is a date, it means that this customer canceled this particular date. So wherever the cell is blank, it means that this customer is still present. So using the count if, I'm going to count this column. Wherever there is a date, I'm going to count the cell. So this would mean that these customers have cancelled. So equal to count if. I want to count the cancel date column, comma, if. All right, so if it is not equal to blank, so we have that 2,004 customers have cancelled their subscription. Interesting. So let's go over to Power BI and see how we can do this. So I'm going to create another measure. and I'll name this measure cancelled. Okay, cancelled customers. Okay, and this will be equals to, so I'm going to use the calculate function. So calculate function is like a filter function, just like the count if we have calculate. Okay, so calculate function is like a filter function. So I'm going to use this to calculate the total customers when the cancel date is not equal to blank. Okay, so let's see what this gives us. Okay, I'm just going to copy and paste this and remove this and put in the cancelled customers measure. So you see, we have 2004. Interesting. This is actually getting interesting, right? So basically, you can use SQL to analyze your data. You can use Excel to analyze your data. You can use Power BI to analyze your data. All right, so moving on to SQL here. All right, so what is the total number of customers who have cancelled? When it comes to answering data analysis questions, one of the things that you should keep in mind is that you need to understand the question. You need to understand the task at hand. When you understand the question, when you understand the task at hand, it will be very easy for you to know which function to use, to know which command to use. In Excel, we use the count if because we are counting based on a condition. We are counting, or we counted the cancel date column if the cell is not blank, so we're going to count it. In Power BI, we counted the cancelled column if it is not blank. So we are going to also do the same for SQL. So I'm going to say select count all rows from the subscription table where the cancel date is not null. So nulls are also blanks, all right, in SQL. So I'm just going to break this real quick. All right, so let's see what this gives. So when I execute this, I also get 2004. Okay, so let's first move on. What is the next thing that we need to do? All right, so the next question says, what is the distribution of present and cancelled customers? So first of all, I am going to create a conditional column here, and I'll name it present cancelled. All right, okay, so using the if, I'm going to create a conditional column here, and I'll say if the cancel date is not equal to blank, it means that this customer has cancelled, right? So I'm going to put in cancelled. Otherwise, if it is equal to blank, it means that the customer is still present. All right. So how do we get the distribution of present and cancelled customers? That means I want to know how many customers are present, how many customers are cancelled. So very quickly, I am going to come here and insert a pivot table. Okay, the name of my table is subscription. Okay, subscription. All right. Okay, so I'm going to put in the customer ID into the values and also the present and cancelled column, the column I just created, into rows. Okay, we're going to have this. So this is showing sum. I'm going to just change it from sum to count. Okay, so now this makes more sense, right? So in summary, we have that 2004 customers have cancelled their subscriptions while 1065 customers are still present. So let's see how we can do this in Power BI. Alright, so I'm going to head over to my table view and I am going to create a new column. Alright, so this column is going to be present, cancel, just like we had it in Excel, equal to, using the if function. So if the cancel date if the cancel date is equal to blank, that means the customer is present. And if it is not equal to blank, it means that the customer has cancelled. Okay. All right, so let us see if we're going to get the same thing. So to visualize this, I'm going to use a table visual. And then I am going to bring in the column I just created, which is the conditional column, present and cancelled, into columns. I'm going to drag the customer ID underneath that and change it from sum to count. Okay, so I'm just going to format this a little bit. All right, so you see how easy it was to do that. But which do you think was more easier? Was it doing it in Excel or doing it in Power BI? Let me know what you think in the comments. So let's move on to SQL and see how we can achieve this in SQL. So when it comes to creating conditional columns in SQL, I like using the case when, because the case when lets you create this conditional column with ease. Okay, so I'm going to select case when. Before I do this, right, I always like to make sure I select all the rows from the subscription table, because it just lets me call the columns that I need faster. So I'm going to take out this. So select case. Okay, I'm going to select the customer ID first of all. So select customer ID, comma, case when. So case when cancel date is null. So wherever the cancel date is null, that means the customer is still present. That means wherever the cancel date is blank, it means the customer is still present. So case when the cancel date is null, then present. So then present, else, cancelled. And I'm going to end as present, cancelled, just like we had it in Excel and Power BI. Okay, so let's see what this gives us. So now we've been able to get this, but then how do we just like what we had in Excel and Power BI, we can see that for cancelled it is 2004, for present it is 1065. So I'm going to introduce a CTE. I'm just going to create a temporary table in this query so that I can query this temporary table to get exactly the same results that I'm having in Excel and Power BI. Okay, so I'm just going to come up here and say with CTE as. Okay, I'm going to close my CT. So basically, I'm putting this in my CT. So I'm going to come down and select. What do I want to select? I want to select this column, this conditional column I just created. And I want to count the customer ID. So let me call this as count from the city. So when I run this, or when I execute this rather, okay, so I am supposed to include a group by. So I'm grouping by the present or cancelled column. And when I execute this, I have it exactly the way it is in Excel and Power BI. So now back to you, another question for you. Which tool do you think was more easier to use? Let me know in the comments, okay? All right, so we are going to our last question, which is what is the subscription interval of customers who have cancelled, and was their subscription paid? So this is kind of like complex and very tricky too. So I'm going to copy this and go back to Excel. Okay. All right, so this particular question wants us to analyze for these people who have cancelled, how many months were they subscribed for? So basically that is what we want to know. So how do we achieve that? So I'm going to calculate the month interval between the created date and the cancel date. And to do that, I am going to use the date diff function. Okay, I'm going to use the date diff function. So let's say subscription. I think we already have the subscription interval. So I'm just going to call this interval equal to date diff okay, so the difference between the created dates, comma, and the cancelled dates, comma, and I need it to return as month. So I'm going to put M in quotes. All right, so wherever there is none, it means that this customer hasn't cancelled yet. Okay, so I'm going to create another pivot table here. subscription is my table name, and then I will put in the interval. Okay, so I think I need to refresh. But yeah, so all right, so I'm going to drag in the interval into the rows and also the customer ID into value, so I see how many customers have left based on their interval, based on their subscription interval. So I'll change the sum to count. All right, so we have that people or customers who have spent 0 months, which means less than a month, actually make up or tops the list. So customers who have spent between 0 to 1 month actually top the list. So this brings us back to when I said that there are customers who just want to try out a product, so they're just going to click on free trial and unsubscribe as soon as they are done trying out the product, which is quite normal. So this is what I was able to get. So let's see what this gives us in Power BI, or let's see how to get this in Power BI. So in Power BI, I'm going to go to my table view and create a new column, and so I'll call this column interval using the date diff function. The first date is the created date. The second date is the cancelled date. And the interval I want is the month. Okay, so I'm just going to copy this table. Okay, and I'll remove this present and cancelled, put in the interval, and so this is actually summing it up, so I'm going to change it to don't summarize. So let's see what this gives us. So something really strange is going on here. In Excel, I can see that customers who were subscribed for less than a month, which is 0 months, were 706, but in Power BI, it is showing me something different, 428. So this could mean one thing. So let me just check that out quickly. All right, so I just found the problem. So what I'm going to do, so actually the problem is that, so if you can see, this customer's date for subscription was the 30th of September 2022, and it cancelled a day after, which was the 1st of October 2022. But in the date diff, the interval column here, it's showing 1 month. So I'm going to be creating a conditional column for the intervals so that we have our intervals standardized. All right, so first of all, I'm going to bring back all of this. I'm going to go back to Excel, and what I want to do now is to get the interval in days instead of months. So to get it in days, I'll remove the M and put in D. All right, so that we see the customers who have spent less than a month, or so that we see the customers whose subscription was less than a month. So I'm going to call this interval days. And then from these interval days, I'm going to create another column, and I'll call it interval in months. So this, okay, so interval months. Right, and this is how it's going to go. Okay, so using the if condition, I'm going to create another conditional column for the month. So if the interval in days is greater than or equal to 365 days, that means it is 12 months. So let me just do that here. So that means it is 12 months. Or if the interval in days is greater than or equal to 330 days, that means it is 11 months. Or if the interval in days is greater than or equal to 300 days, that means it is 10 months. Or if the interval in days is greater than or equal to 270 days, that means it's 9 months. So I'm going to do this down till I get to 1 month. So now I'm at the last condition. If the interval, so actually I've been using 30 days, but I'm going to consider months like February that has 28 or 29 days. So lastly, if the interval is greater than or equal to 28 days, that means it is 1 month. So if all of these are true, every other thing is less than a month, so which is 0 months. So I'm going to close this, and okay, so let's see what the issue is. Okay, so I think I've seen the issue. So this was supposed to be 9. All right, so if all of these are true, any other thing that does not meet this condition should be 0 months. All right, so that is it. So now let us see. Let me refresh. And come back to my pivot table. All right, so for rows, instead of interval in days, we're going to have interval in months. All right, so you can see the difference now, right? So let us do the same thing in Power BI. We are going to standardize the subscription interval so that we have a uniform interval across these different tools. All right, so I'm going to come back to this interval column that I created, and I'll change this from month to day. So I'm going to store this calculation in a variable, I'll call this interval days, and this should return. So this is going to be interval in months is equal to, so this should return a conditional column. So I'm going to be using the switch function. All right, so if the interval variable, the interval days variable I just created, if this is blank, so if is blank, okay, so if the cell is blank here, then let it return blank, comma, and if interval days is greater than or equal to 365, then let it be 12 months. If the interval days is greater than or equal to 330, then let it be 11 months. So I'm going to do this down until I get to the 0th month. That is for customers who didn't subscribe up to a month. I'm at the last month, so if the interval days is greater than or equal to, all right, so this shouldn't be 30, right? Because we want to consider months like February. So if it is greater than or equal to 28, then it should be 1 month. So if the cell does not meet any of this condition, that is, it should return 0. That is for cells or subscriptions that were not up to a month, so return 0. Alright, so I'm having an error here. Okay, so I forgot to put in, just like your Excel, we have to put in true. All right, so just like in Excel, we have to put in true. So if all of these conditions are true, any other cell that does not meet it should be returned as 0. When I expand this, so let me visualize this now using, okay, so you can see that we are on track, right? This is exactly what we have in Excel. So for 0, customers who were subscribed for 0 months, that is not up to a month, there were 609. Customers who were subscribed for a month were 663. And it is exactly the same thing we have in Power BI. So let's see how we can get this in SQL. So first of all, I am going to select all rows from my table, and from here, okay, and I'm going to select the customer ID, and I'm going to add another case when, right, because I want to create a conditional column. So case when, all right, so case when the date difference in day between the created date and the cancelled date, case when it is greater than or equal to 365, then 12, otherwise when, so I'm just going to copy this, otherwise when this is greater than or equal to 330, then 11. So I'm going to copy this and just repeat until I get to the last. and when it is greater than or equal to 28 days, 1 month. So I am going to end as interval in months. Alright, so when I run this, let's see what this gives me. So before I run it, we are calculating for those customers who have cancelled. So I'm going to attach a filter here. So where the cancel date is not null. So we're focused on customers who have cancelled. So when I execute this, all right, so how do we answer the question, what is the subscription interval of customers who cancelled? What is the subscription interval of customers who cancelled? I'm going to put this in a CTE. All right, I'm going to create a temporary table for this. Okay, and this is going to be my CTE. All right, so I'm going to select the interval month from my CTE. I'm also going to count the customer ID. So let's call this count as count. Okay, from my CTE. And then I'm going to group by the interval month. So let's see what this gives us. Alright, so it gave us the same thing, right? So I'm going to order this result by the count in descending order. All right, so when I execute this, we have the same. So there's an issue here. I think I know where the issue is coming from. So I am supposed to end it with else. If the cell does not meet any of these conditions, else end it as 0. So this will cover for customers who were not subscribed up to a month. So let me execute this again. I'm going to order by the interval month so that we get it from the 0th month to the 12th month. And let's see what we have. Okay, so we're going to order in ascending order. So you see that we have exactly the same thing we have in Excel and Power BI. So we've come to the end of this video. We've been able to answer all of these questions using these 3 different tools. Which tool do you think is more easier when it comes to analyzing data? Let me know in the comments. Until next time, it's your girl Coco, and bye.